Welcome back, folks, to part 6 on our reproductive unit. In this part, we're going to take a look at the events that happen from fertilization to implantation and a little beyond. So, from egg to embryo, just some terminology so you know what they are. Pregnancy encompasses all the events that occur from fertilization, when sperm meets egg, until the infant is born. Gestation period is a little bit different. It's a little bit longer because from the last menstrual period until birth. And the last menstrual period generally starts about 2 weeks before ovulation, about 14 days. So usually gestation period is about 13 to 15 days longer than pregnancy. Pre-embryo stage is the conceptus, the fertilized egg and what's happening to its offspring cells from fertilization until it's 2 weeks old. There's really no specialization of the cells at that point, just a mass of human cells. During the embryo stage, that's when we start to get the differentiation of cells into different cell types. And that's from the 3rd through the 8th week from conception. And the fetus is from the 9th week through birth, where those differentiated cells are becoming eventually fully functioning organs ready to exit the uterus and join humanity on planet Earth. So here you can see just a little bit, I'll just look at it for a minute, relative size of the human conceptus as compared to a plum in the corner there. So how do we accomplish fertilization? Beyond the external stuff that I hope you guys get in your health class, how do we accomplish fertilization? Well, the oocyte or the egg is viable for between 12 and 24 hours in most cases. After that, it will die and it won't be able to be fertilized. Sperm, on the other hand, has a little bit longer shelf life, about 24 to 72 hours, depending on circumstances, conditions, and the individual who's providing the sperm. So with those numbers in mind, for fertilization to reliably occur, obviously you'd like to, have coitus or sex, right after ovulation. That would be your best chances of success, right? Freshest sperm, freshest egg, great to go. But if you're trying to have a baby and you want to get pregnant, if you know when you are going to ovulate, if you've been keeping track and you can pretty much figure that out, and sometimes you can figure it out with a thermometer, slight changes in temperature occur when you ovulate. So if you're really trying hard, you'll keep track of that. But you'll want to have coitus 3 days before ovulation because the sperm can last that long. So it's sitting there waiting in the fallopian tube for the egg to come out. It's going to jump right on it. Up to 24 hours after ovulation. Much beyond that window, the farther out beyond that window you get, the chances of getting pregnant drop pretty steeply. Now, can you get pregnant outside that window? Yes. Can sperm last a little bit longer? Yeah. Can eggs last a bit longer? Yeah. Can you ovulate on days, a little bit earlier or later than you thought you would? Yeah. So using those numbers as birth control can get tricky. If you are off at all, or you get an outlier event with sperm or eggs that last longer than they normally would, you could have some problems, okay? And fertilization is the term we use when the sperm fuses with the egg and forms a single cell called a zygote. So what happens to the sperm after it's ejaculated? A decent bit might leak out of the vagina immediately after deposition. Now, remember, it does coagulate and get stickier in there right away, but then it will still be able to run a bit, and then it will get runnier later, and even more can run out. Some of it gets destroyed by the acidic vaginal environment. Some won't make it through the cervix; they'll stay trapped in the vagina. Those that survive didn't leak out, got through vagina without dying, and got through the cervix and are now in the uterine cavity, might get stuck in the uterine cavity and never get up the fallopian tubes where the eggs are. A lot of that'll happen, and some will get destroyed in there, and then a small percentage will reach the actual uterine tubes. And there's 2 uterine tubes. Only one of them release an egg in most cases in any given menstrual cycle. So half of them are going down a dead end, and the other half are going towards the egg. That's why we need so many sperm that we talked about before, hundreds of millions of sperm in a single ejaculation, because so much of it doesn't actually even make the egg, and you do need more than one sperm to fertilize an egg. And that has to do with the acrosomal reaction and sperm penetration. So an ovulated oocyte is encapsulated by a couple of layers, the corona radiata and the zona pellucida and the extracellular matrix. The sperm will bind to the zona pellucida and undergoes the acrosomal reaction. That helmet of enzymes we talked about that's on the tip of the sperm will get released near the oocyte and start to digest those outer layers around the egg to allow the sperm to get close enough to the egg to get in. Now, one cell doesn't do it, okay? Once sperm makes contact with the oocyte's membrane, it will then insert into the membrane, but it takes many cells working together to get in, which is why just one won't make it. Because it's like World War II carpet bombing. You just hit it with as much as you can, and hopefully you'll break through eventually. Okay. So here we can see sperm coming in, all these layers they've got to get through with the acrosomal reaction before one actually gets all the way in. Now, you don't want more than one sperm getting in because you'd have too many chromosomes and you won't have a viable embryo. Only one sperm is allowed to penetrate the oocyte. Sometimes do more get in there? Yes. But you generally don't know that a sperm even made it to the egg in those cases because it won't implant and it won't develop, so you'll just have your menstrual period at the normal time or maybe a couple days later. There's probably a lot more women who have had a fertilized egg and didn't realize it because there was something too wrong with it genetically, too many chromosomes, not enough chromosomes, whatever, that it couldn't implant, or it did implant for a little bit but wasn't able to develop, and then it would come out either as a regular menstrual cycle or a little bit later but slightly heavier menstrual cycle. Don't have any numbers on exactly what percent that is, but it does happen. Two mechanisms do help to ensure monospermy. One is a fast block. The membrane will depolarize, which keeps sperm from getting in. And there's a slow block where you actually destroy the receptors, the little docking ports for the sperm on the surface of the egg. And if you do that, any sperm that are docked get kicked out, and no more can get attached. Okay. So fertilization is complete when the nuclei of the two cells combine, and then you got your zygote. That's fertilization. So immediately following fertilization, the nuclei are going to start to combine. Once they do, now you got 23 cells from the egg, 23 chromosomes from the egg, and 23 chromosomes from the sperm. They're going to combine to form 46 chromosomes, a complete chromosomal set for a human at least. And then you're going to start undergoing DNA replication, where you make a copy of all those. You split them apart in mitosis to make two new daughter cells, and you are on your way to growing a baby. So pre-embryonic development, that's those first 2 weeks, right? So that first cleavage or cell division, we call it a cleavage, produces two daughter cells, which we call blastomeres. About 3 days later, you're at the morula stage, where you've got 16 cells. Woo, 16 whole cells. It's not much, guys, microscopic. At about 72 hours old. By the 4th or 5th day, the pre-embryo consists of about 100 or so cells, and we call that a blastocyst. Cyst doesn't sound pleasant, but it is a cyst. It does have a hollow area in it. So a blastocyst is a fluid-filled hollow sphere. A single layer of tropoblasts form the outer sphere, and on one side of it, you got an inner cell mass. The tropoblasts on the outer side part are what's going to actually fuse with the endometrium to help form the placenta and the attachment between the mother and the baby. And the inner cell mass is what's going to become the embryonic disc, and eventually, if everything goes according to plan, become a baby. So let's take a look at the sequence of events here from ovulation to implantation. So we got ovulation, okay, from the ovary. We can see the oocyte and the egg picked up by the fimbriae and the ampulla and entering the uterine tubule. We can see that fertilization generally occurs pretty high up in the uterine tube. Our zygote starts to form there. Then 4 stage, after 2 days, we're about there. We're still in the fallopian tube. Okay. Morula at around 3 days. We're still in the fallopian tube oftentimes, not always. And then we break out into the uterus proper. Okay. And we can see the blastocyst, where you got the tropoblasts around the outside, which will help to form the placenta eventually, and the inner cell mass, which is going to become the baby. And then we can see down here, full implantation into the endometrium, and the endometrial lining will actually start to grow around that tropoblast and that cell mass to form that connection between the mother and baby, so you can protect that growing pre-embryo and then fetus and form the placenta and everything else you need to help grow the baby. And that'll do it from this point, guys. In the next section, we'll talk about what happens to the baby from implantation, from being in embryo stage through until they are born. See you then.